See, most men fear silence, right? They fear the loneliness. They fear that brutal mirror that solitude holds up to their face. So what do? They go and bury themselves in toxic relationships, dead-end jobs, just endless distractions, anything to avoid the one enemy they cannot outrun, and that's themselves. And how do I know this? Because, hey, I'm a man, and guess what? I ticked all of those boxes for most of my life. But I want to tell you something different. There's another version of you, the next version of you, the savage, the king, the creator, who isn't found in comfort. He is forged in isolation. And this is what I call the lone wolf stage. And you've probably heard it with other names, Dark Night of the Soul. But I like the lone wolf stage because that resonates with me. I've always felt like the lone wolf, right? And the lone wolf phase, it could feel like punishment, but it's not. It's fucking initiation, right? Because see, throughout history, the men who have changed the world, they didn't just blend in with the crowd. They stepped into the wilderness alone. They faced the darkness that soft men, run from. And if you look at it, Moses, 40 days in the mountains. Buddha, 49 days alone under the Bondi tree. Jesus, 40 days and nights in the desert. This wasn't weakness. This was true preparation. And if you look at ancient cultures and even some modern tribes that aren't westernized, the boys, they aren't just handed manhood. They're sent into the wild, stripped of any type of comfort, stripped of any type of safety. And only those who face that silence and come back become men, right? And today, most men will never know the rite of passage. Modern life has robbed us of that. But if you've woken up, if you're awake enough to feel the pull within, to go into solitude, it's because you were never meant to live as an ordinary man. You were born to walk the harder road. You were born to awaken that savage within. So today, I'm breaking down why the lone wolf phase isn't just part of your awakening. It's actually the battlefield where your real power is born. Now, I've had more than one of these, okay? But the most powerful one started just over 18 months ago, okay? And I thought I had overcome everything that I had to overcome, right? And so it was about 18 months ago. And on the outside, again, life looked great. Life looked good. I had a successful coaching business. I had some one-to-one face-to-face clients here locally, and these were law enforcement guys, and I loved working with them, right? And then I had some online clients all over the world. I just launched a new podcast, and I had 10 incredible guests already lined up. So I was super excited. I was buzzing. I was energized. I was focused. I'm like, this is me. I'm stepping in to why I came here, right? So everything finally felt like it was coming together. And then all of a sudden, it was like overnight, everything just started to crumble, right? One by one, my face-to-face clients, they told me they couldn't continue through personal reasons, and they assured me it was nothing about me. But that didn't stop my mind from going, what the fuck am I doing wrong? Why is this happening? Self-doubt started to creep back in, and I've spoke to you how much I've struggled with that, so I started to beat myself up. And then I started to look at it differently, and I told myself, maybe this is just the universe clearing space, making room for me to fully focus on the podcast. So I flipped the script, kept my head up, and poured everything I had into the podcast. And for a while, it was working, right? The first 4 months were, great. I was learning, I was growing, I was feeling aligned. And then my world got flipped upside down from a totally different direction. My wife collapsed, and they thought she was dead, and I wasn't there. But when they responded, she went white and they couldn't feel a pulse. So she just collapsed out of nowhere. And, and thank God she didn't die, because that would have ended me. But that day marked the beginning of an entirely new journey, right? One that we are still walking now as a family. Okay. And so then, we moved on to Christmas and into the new year, and something inside me just started to shift. Right. And everything that, once got me excited, once lit me up, it was fading. The passion that I felt for coaching, and it was disappearing. Right. And I told myself, oh, this is just maybe the holiday blues. But as January rolled into February, it wasn't lifting. It was getting worse. Right. I stopped calling friends. I stopped answering phone calls. I didn't want to talk to anyone outside of my wife and kids. My bullshit radar just went through the roof. I couldn't stomach small talk, gossip, surface level conversations. I just couldn't fake it anymore. My wife used to speak to people when we were out shopping, and it's all that kind of small chit chat. I just had to walk away. I literally couldn't. I couldn't deal with it. Honestly, I was scared because all the old fears started rushing back. How am I going to provide for my family? What am I going to do for work now? I've spent all this money and time and energy building all this. What am I going to do? Who am I without success? The clients, all this bullshit is validation. And I just felt like everything was closing in. The man who I thought I was just falling apart. But see, deep down beneath all of that fear, that frustration, there was this quiet knowing that this is all happening for a reason. And I always believe that. That's the thing. And I don't know where that comes from, but I do. I knew this was happening for me because I never fall into that victim. I might for a second, but I quickly pull myself back in and I said, what's happening? Why is this happening? This is happening for me. There's something. So I knew where I had to go. Okay. And it wasn't out there. It wasn't to go and hustle my way through this and hustle hard and try and fix this with another plan or another coaching program or another campaign. No, I knew I had to go deep within. I had to go because the reason I knew that I had to go deep within because I knew that there was nothing else that I could do. And I was just feeling so pulled to go back into isolation, right? And I had to sit with those questions that I was trying to run from. Right? And I knew that I would be given the answers if I just got still, if I meditated, if I listened. And that phase that I went through, I thought it would have been like my last Dark Nights of the Soul, which was a couple of months. But this wasn't. This was like a year long, right? This was the lone wolf stage, it was the longest that I'd ever been in. And it wasn't destructive. This was, I believe, was my initiation. It was the fire that was burning the rest of the masks, the roles, the noise, and it was revealing something much deeper, right? I'd far gone beyond the hustler, the addict, I'd lost all those masks, but I was still carrying some. But this was the point where they started to disappear, right? And what I didn't fully understand at the time as well, this stage, this was stripping away. It wasn't just about my own healing. It was preparing me for the next chapter. It was preparing me for this, for showing up here, for pressing record, for finally stepping into the thing that I'd had a calling to for 5 years, but I'd put it off a time and time again, which was start my YouTube channel. See, this wasn't some new idea that just popped into my head 2 months ago when I started this. I've had this vision for 5, maybe more years. But I can remember it was one of the first things I wrote on my vision was to have a successful YouTube channel, right? That was half a decade ago, right? And yeah, I wanted to do this and I beat myself up so many times for not starting it sooner. Where would I be now if I started it 5 years ago? I would be much further ahead, this, that, and the next thing. But the truth was, and the truth is, I wasn't ready back then, right? There was nowhere I was definitely not ready. Not in the way that I needed to be. Because I hadn't walked through certain fires that would give me the depth, the experience, the perspective I needed to serve the people I'm here to serve, right? And I kept getting, downloads to say that, that it's not all about me. And the way I took that was the people that I'm supposed to connect with, they haven't woken up yet. But it wasn't just that. It was that I wasn't ready to give them the knowledge that they needed when they woke up. So it was a double-edged sword thing. And so if I'd have started back then, the people who I'm supposed to serve, they weren't going to be awake. And plus, I wasn't ready. So I needed to go through my own initiation. Yeah, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd have told you I'm ready. But I tell you right now, I wasn't. Right? I still had battles to fight. I still had parts of myself to let go that I had to face. Right? I still had wisdom that I needed to learn the hard way. Right? Not from books or podcasts or, whatever else, but through lived experience, through loss, through struggle, through heartache, through breakthrough, through spiritual growth that stretched me further than I thought possible. Experiences that are outerworldly that people would not believe. But because they've happened to me, I know that they've happened to me. And I don't care if people don't believe me. But I know there'll be other people out there who are struggling, who are going through the same things, and they have no one to talk to. I'm here to help them. Okay? And I believe this in every single part of me. This path, this process, and everything was divine timing. It had to happen this way, not just for me, but for the men who are watching these videos right now, for the men who are waking up, for the men who are questioning everything, right? The men who are standing on the edge of their own lone wolf phase, wondering if they're losing their marbles, right? Or they're just finally finding out the truth, right? I had to walk through it. Okay, not so I could sit here and talk to you, but so I could meet you here where you're at, eye to eye, as someone who knows what the road feels like. Because this channel has never been about me, and I said this at the beginning. It's about us. It's about building a community of men who are done pretending, done numbing, done shrinking. A space where we walk this ascension journey together, raw, honest, fully human, and fully awake. Okay, so you might be going through this stage right now, bro, and it feels like it's pulling everything away from you. But let me tell you, this is not a punishment. This is a preparation, just like it was for me. And just maybe, it's your time to rise. Okay, and that's what I want to share with you today. Because, when you're stuck in the lone wolf stage, it can feel draining, it can feel depressing, right? But just know that the universe is stripping everything away that no longer aligns with you, so that you can be ready to bring in the new things that are ready. Okay, and I'm going to show you that this phase isn't something to fear. It's something to fully embrace, because the lone wolf phase, it will not be your downfall. It will be your path to power. And sorry, I've still got a really bad chest and throat. I'm absolutely so ill. Okay, and so I don't know if you can hear it today. But yeah, so where was I? Yeah, so this is the thing most people will miss out on the lone wolf stage, right? This isn't just some rough patch, okay? This isn't some unfortunate coincidence that strips things away when you're on the verge of, stepping into your next level. It's actually built into the architecture of awakening. It's written into every spiritual tradition, into human psychology, even into the biology of the nervous system. Across cultures, across timelines, through all different ages, this phase shows up time and time again. Right? The Buddhists called it the Great Departure. The Sufis called it Fana. Christianity, the Dark Night of the Soul. Right? If you look at Jungian, psychology, they call it the Night Sea Journey. Right? Which is a descent into the unconscious where the real self is forged. Okay, this stage of solitude, of pulling away from the crowd, of being forced into silence and self-confrontation, it is not punishment, it's a rite of passage. It's the spiritual furnace where the old identity burns away and the awakened savage is born. Okay, and Carl Jung, he speaks about individualization, right? The process of becoming whole. But individualization doesn't happen when you're drowning in noise. It doesn't happen while you're playing to the expectations of society or the group. It happens when you unplug from the matrix of validation, when you strip away those roles, the business card, the relationship status, the social image, and you ask, who am I without all that bullshit? Who am I really? And most men never get there, right? Most men are terrified of being alone with themselves. I could not sit myself for 2 seconds. That's why I ran to alcohol and drugs to numb it. Okay, but there's a psychological power to this lone wolf phase. Okay, when you're isolated, your brain is forced to reorganize. Okay, and I'm not just telling you this. This was on a 2019 study from University of California, right? And they found that intentional solitude increases neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. So when you remove the constant external stimuli or stimulation, your brain doesn't shut down. It adapts, it grows, it creates new neural pathways. You begin to see patterns that were invisible before. You begin to hear your own voice again, not the voice of your father, your mother, society. No, not the noise of the world, but your voice, the God within. And that, brother, that is where you connect and awaken that savage within. Okay, and this isn't just about philosophy, and this is true biology, right? Because there was another research done, right, and this was at Princeton University, and they discovered that isolation triggers DMT, right? So DMT, I don't know if you know what that is. It's like a spirit molecule, it's called, right? And it releases that during deep meditative states. Psychedelic journey. Some people go and they go to retreats and they do it, right? When you are in, isolation, that triggers a surge of it. The lone wolf stage isn't just some spiritual concept, biological necessity for profound transformation. It creates the neurological conditions required to completely reshaping your perception of yourself and reality. So this means that solitude literally creates the internal conditions for profound insight, spiritual downloads, and emotional, integration. And this is, for me, when I've had my spiritual experiences or my connection with guides, it's always been in solitude. Okay, when I've in my Kundalini awakening, these are all been like, they seem like random, but they're not. It's when I'm putting myself into a place and I'm connecting with intention. Okay, and so if you're going through this, you might be thinking, listen, I'm losing my mind, but you're not. Right? You're just opening the channel to something higher. And for some people, when they connect with something higher, they might think that they're losing their mind because of the stigma that's been attached to it. But that's not true. Okay, this is, your body isn't breaking down, right? It's upgrading. It's preparing you to hold more power, more presence, more clarity to receive the guidance necessary for your next stage. Okay, that if you look, throughout history, right, the most dangerous men in history, the most effective, the most legendary, were not men who stayed, surrounded by a crowd. There was those who stepped away from it, right? And this will explain why so many visionary leaders throughout history deliberately sought isolation. Steve Jobs would walk barefoot through the hills of California, right, to ponder his biggest decisions. Tesla would take solitary walks. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in isolation while campaigning with his armies. Uh, Miyamoto Mushimi, the Japanese great swordsman, he disappeared into the mountains to perfect both his skills and his mind. He wrote poetry, he meditated, he wrote his greatest work when he was in solitude. So the lone wolf doesn't isolate you to escape. It isolates you to prepare, to refine your edge, to sharpen your spirit. And this is what most men miss. This phasing isn't about becoming a permanent hermit, right? No, the lone wolf doesn't abandon the pack forever. He steps away, to specifically develop strengths, get insights and powers that, he cannot gain within the group dynamic. And when a wolf leaves the pack, he's forced to develop new hunting strategies. He becomes more alert, more strategic, more self-sufficient. And when he eventually returns to a pack, or he forms his own, he's not the same wolf who left. He becomes something much more powerful. Okay, and this is what most modern men will never experience. Like, they move from their parents to a roommate's house, to a relationship, to a cubicle, always surrounded, always distracted, always externally validated. They never develop the profound self-knowledge that only comes with that true strategic isolation. They look at the average man today, and I'm not trying here to put people down. I love all of you. But if you look at the average man constantly checking his phone, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was a statistic that the average person opens their phone 700 times a day. Now, that just blows my mind. If you look at that, as the average man's constantly checking his phone, constantly seeking validation, distracting himself from one relationship to another, right? Marriages aren't lasting because people are just abandoning ship. Families are getting destroyed. What kind of example you set your children? Right? This is why it's up to us as, awakened savages to stand up and be counted. Because the average man, he fears silence, because seeing silence, he might have to face that own emptiness. He might have to acknowledge that he doesn't know who he is outside other people's expectations. Whereas the spiritually awakened man embraces these periods of isolation, and he knows that these are not punishments. These are initiations. I need this. This is not a loss. This is an opportunity for great discovery, to step into who you truly are, to understand your authentic self and your purpose. Sorry, guys. Okay, I'm really struggling here, and this is what modern culture has forgotten. Right? We have been sold a lie that power comes from hustling harder, from constant connection, from networking, from grinding, from being on it 24/7. No, real power, the kind that doesn't need, to prove, that's born in the quiet. It's born in the place where all the masks fall off, where the noise dies down, where you're left face to face with the truth of who you truly are. Right? And this is the lone wolf phase, is where the false self dies, and the awakened savage, the man who leads, who loves, who protects, who creates, he is forged, not through avoidance, not through numbing, but through the sacred art of solitude. I'm feeling very passionate today, as you could probably tell, because this topic is so close to my heart. Right? It changed my life. Right? So now that you understand that this phase exists, and you might be going through it, and why is woven into the structure of our awakening. The next question is, how do you know if you're being called to go into your lone wolf stage? Right? Because here's the truth. It doesn't always come with big flashing sign and says, "Well, let's go." Sometimes it just sneaks in quietly, or it starts sometime before, and then it builds and builds and builds until you cannot no longer ignore it. But either way, the call is there. Okay, so if you're not awake to these signs, you might mistake this initiation for failure. You might think your life is falling apart, when in reality, life is slowly stripping away what no longer serves you or the man that you're becoming. So let's get it clear. Okay, let's understand, what is going on here. So let's look at 5 unmistakable signs that you're stepping into the lone wolf stage, right? Okay, and these are based off me and my experiences over the past 7 years, right? And with the men that I've worked with, conversations start to feel empty. You find yourself sitting in rooms where the old banter that felt comfortable. Now it's like it's draining you. Small talks, you can't be bothered with it. Gossip makes your skin crawl. You just start to sense that many of the people, the connections you built, were for that old version, the version of you that you're outgrown. Okay, it's not that you dislike or you hate these people. It's just that your spirit knows that you can't keep pretending to fit a life that no longer fits you. Okay, number 2, right? You have this, craving for silence and space. Right? It's not depression. It's not antisocial behaviour. It's just this pull, this inner call that you need to step back, to unplug, to kind of go within, to find solitude. Right? You're torn between the part of you that wants to stay comfortable, distracted, validated, and the part of you that feels this wild, passionate calling of purpose, to your name. Right? And if solitude both excites you and terrifies you, that's a sign your initiation is beginning. Okay, number 3, your bullshit radar just goes off the charts. You can no longer tolerate fakeness, fake friends, fake conversations, fake ambition, fake positivity, fake, fuck off. Okay, the masks other wear become obvious to you, but even more painfully, see the masks that you've been wearing, you cannot wear them anymore, right? They're undeniable. You start catching yourself people pleasing. You catch yourself performing, doing things out of obligation instead of authenticity. You're saying yes when you really want to say no, right? And you just cannot stomach it anymore. This is your soul telling you, no more. Let's get real and strip it back. Okay, number 4, you feel that pull towards nature, simplicity, minimalism, right? And it might start small. A walk outside with without your phone. A desire to be in the woods, near the ocean, under the stars. But deeper than that, you feel this urge to simplify, less clutter, fewer distractions, just to be at peace. Okay, and this is why indigenous cultures understood this. The warriors understood this. This is when it's time to awaken. A spirit calls you back to the primal, back to the earth, back to your breath, back to the basics. Because in simplicity, the signal gets clearer. This is why I love nature. See, 6, 7, 8 years ago, you would never have caught me going out and walking in the woods. But see, now I love it. At night time, I look up at the stars. I feel so blessed. I love being in the water. I love nature. I live right next to the ocean. I know God's put me here in this place for a reason. I've got everything that I never used to think that I needed, but now I believe that it's making me who I am. Number 5, the old hustle doesn't work anymore. The strategies, the routines, the habits, that once drove you, they stop producing the same results. You feel frustrated, right? Doing all the right things, but feeling emptier, not fuller. Yeah, and this is one of the clearest signs. The old fuel no longer feeds the fire because the fire has changed. The man who built that life isn't the man who's waking up right now. Right? You're being called to a whole new operating system, one that isn't driven by force, but is driven by alignment. Okay, and I'll give you just a bonus one, right? Synchronicities of strange alignments keep showing up, right? Maybe you stumble across messages like this one. You've never seen me before and this message pops up, or a book falls off a shelf, or somebody recommends you a book that you've been thinking about. Random conversations spark something deep inside of you. Everywhere you look, the universe seems to be whispering the same thing. It's time. It's time to step back. It's time to go in. It's time to, reflect. It's time to meet yourself on a deeper level. Okay, and was just at the end of my lone wolf stage there, the universe was giving me the message to be authentically me. And this is why I created this channel about authenticity, because I didn't have a channel name, and it was just be authentically you. So I listened, and that's what I'm doing. Okay, so listen, you're being called. If 2, 3, or more of those signs showing up in your life right now, pay attention. This isn't random. This isn't failure. This is a clear call to initiation. This is the wilderness asking you for presence. Okay, the question now isn't whether you've been called or not. It's whether you will answer the call or not. Okay, so now that you've maybe got an understanding of what these signs, and you're starting to recognize and nodding your head and thinking, this is right where I'm at right now. Okay, the next question is, okay, now I know that I'm there. What do I actually do in this phase? Because this is where most people get it wrong. Most men, they will fight the solitude, panic, and scramble to fill the silence, and they'll fall back into the traps of isolation without intention, drifting, numbing out, losing themselves in bullshit. Right? But the lone wolf stage is not about isolation for the sake of isolation. It's about strategic solitude. It's about tuning into the most productive, soul forging period of your life. And there's 5 tools that you can implement that I've used myself and other men that I've helped along the journey. Okay, so the first one I would recommend is do your own vision quest, which I call it the digital vision quest. Right? So what you do is you just unplug fully between 24 and 72 hours. I understand you've got families and it might not be okay to do 72 hours. But if you can get away for 24 hours, no phone, no Netflix, no social media, no email, no nothing, just you, your journal, and your silence. Right? Again, this is something that it's not a punishment, it's purification. Okay? The constant drip feed of distractions keep you tied to the identity you're trying to outgrow. Right? It's time to pull the plug from that and let your nervous system start to recalibrate. And I promise you, see if you give yourself 72 hours with no distractions and a journal just sitting there with yourself, something magical will happen. You'll be amazed at what happens, when the dopamine cycles stop hijacking your clarity. Okay? And pick a time, set it in advance. Pick one weekend, notify people, notify your partner, your wife, your friends, your family, and just say, you know what? I'm going to do a digital vision quest. Okay? And even try and, plan something for your family so that they're not feeling left out or whatever. Spend, I would say 72 hours, but if you can't do 72 hours and 24 is the minimum, then do 24, right? And if you can't do 24, do 12. But if you really need to spend time on your own. Okay. And then the second practice is, shadow journaling. This is when you hold the savage mirror up to your face, right? Every morning, just grab your notebook, set a timer for 20 minutes and just be 100% honest, right? And start just intuitive writing. Ask yourself questions like, what am I avoiding? What truth am I scared to admit? Where am I still wearing masks? Do I fear happening if I done this, if I done that, if I fully showed up as me? Just write without editing. Let the shadow speak, right? Just intuitively write, and don't stop. Just keep writing. And this is where the masks will start to fall off. This is where the savagery gets forged, not by pretending the darkness isn't there, but by facing it head on. Okay, and then number 3 is the discomfort meditation. This is what builds a spiritual muscle, right? The savage doesn't numb pain. He learns how to hold it. So this is a practice, right? Sit in silence. Okay, find the most uncomfortable sensation, thought, or emotion in your body. Don't resist it. Don't label it. Don't try to suppress it. Don't try to fix it. Just breathe directly into it, right? Just be present, get curious, and ask, what are you here to teach me? Okay, this rewires your relationship with discomfort. You stop running, you stop fighting, you learn to stand steady inside of that storm within. And I promise you, this is where real strength lies. When you stop trying to run away from your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and all that, and you sit with them, you've got to feel it to heal it, and you will come back stronger. Okay, and number 4, yeah. So sacred study, feed the mind, not the noise, right? So use this. I call it my wisdom council, right? So I've got 5 core books that they're my go-to books, right? Especially during dark times. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll do a separate video on these books, but right now I don't want to mention them, right? Because I don't want you picking these books just because I picked them. I want you to find your own books, your own inspiration based on what you feel aligned to, what's calling you, because there's no point just saying, I'll get them because Lachlan got them, because that might not be true for you, right? And it's, and find something that's aligned that lights you up when you've heard of it, you've thought of it, maybe you've got a vision or a thought or somebody's, whatever, you'll know, right? And, spend time with these books. No scrolling, no mindless content. Feed your mind with the fuel that sharpens your soul. right? Pick 5 voices, philosophers, spiritual leaders, warriors, men who have walked the path before you, and you'll probably have an understanding if you've been watching my content, who are the authors of my books, because I've mentioned them in a lot of my videos, right? And these people who have influenced my life in such a positive way, because I spend time daily reading them, reflecting, applying, right? Because see, isolation without guidance, that leads to wandering. But isolation with wisdom, this is where it leads to the savage becoming awakened. Okay, and number 5, again, I can't say it enough. You need to ground in nature, reclaim that primal connection at least once a day. Step outside, barefoot if possible. Breathe deep, feel the ground beneath you. Just imagine connecting with Mother Nature, right? Get into the woods, get into the sea, get into the hills, stand under the sky. Just remember how amazing you are. No headphones, no podcasting, no multitasking, just you, the earth, and the breath, right? And the warriors, ancient warriors knew this, the samurais knew this, the stoics knew this, the indigenous knew this. Nature isn't a luxury. It's the reset your nervous system craves. This is where your clarity sharpens. This is where your focus returns. Okay, and before you go into this and do this lone wolf stage, I would highly advise you set a clear intention for this phase. And write it down. Just write, when I emerge from this phase, I will be ... Not vague, not fluffy, specific. Who will you be? What will you stand for? What part of the old self will you let go, burn? When the mind wants to spiral, when the doubt creeps in, then you can return to that intention. Anchor it into you. Let it remind you that this phase isn't going to break you, it's building you. Okay? None of this is complicated, but it requires commitment. Okay? This is the phase where the boy inside screams for comfort, but the man you're becoming whispers, not today. Right? This is your crucible, and these tools, they are not self-care, they are self-forging. Right? So you can walk into the fire, so you can rise as a man you were meant to be. Right? Not all men will answer the call, and most men get the call, but they don't answer it. Right? In fact, this is the moment that most men run from. This is a moment they reach for distraction, for comfort, for validation, because facing yourself fully, that's the fight most are too scared to take on. But you're here, watching me, this far in. You're feeling this, because deep down you already know this isn't your breakdown, this is your breakthrough. This is not where your story ends. This is where the next chapter is written in your own blood, sweat, tears, spirit. Right here in the silence, right here when no one's watching, right here where it's just you and the man in the mirror. This is your rite of passage, right? This is a part of the movie where the hero disappears, where the warrior walks into the wilderness, where the old self burns off and something much greater and stronger takes its place. Okay? And listen, before we finish up here, the power you are looking for, the clarity you are craving, the purpose you feel is missing, it is not out there. It's not in the next book, the next course, the next relationship, right? It's in here, in you. It's been in you the whole time, okay? But you will only meet that version of yourself, your awakened savage, when you're willing to stop running, when you're willing to sit with discomfort, when you're willing to face every fear and still choose to rise. Right? As I keep saying, this is not punishment. This is preparation. The universe is stripping away everything that's not you. Okay? So what remains is you, pure, focused, unstoppable. Okay? This is the cocoon where the man you were born to be is forged. Right? So don't rush the process. Don't try and numb the pain. Don't try and patch the cracks. Right? Because let it fall. Let it die. Let the old masks burn. Because see, when that smoke clears, you're going to step forward. Not as the man the world told you to be, but the man you were always meant to be. Solid, rooted, unshakable, dangerous. Because your power is anchored in peace, not ego. This is what makes you untouchable, unstoppable. This is not about surviving, it's about rising. You're not stuck. You're being called to rise. So will you answer that call? Will you? Right? And just before we finish for today, I'm going to give you a challenge, right? So if you're in this lone wolf stage and if this message hit something deep inside you, it's not by accident, right? This was the call. The only question is, will you answer it? So what I want you to do is take 24 hours of intentional solitude within the next week. No phone, no social media, no Netflix, just you, your thoughts, your journal, your breath. Sit in that silence. See what rises, face it. Don't flinch, right? Don't numb it. You lean in, right? Don't avoid it. Witness, right? Don't distract. Listen, okay? And then drop a comment below right now. I accept the call. Let that be your line in the sand, your declaration, not for me, for you, because the man who speaks his commitment out loud is a man who's ready to back it up with action. And if you know another brother out there who's drifting, another man who's stuck in distraction, drowning in noise, send him this video, please, because this might be the wake-up call that he's been waiting for. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, drop a wee like, okay, hit the bell, not out of habit, because you want to be on this journey when we're building something, a space where men don't hide, a space where men face the work, where we rise up together. Now go on and alchemize this lone wolf face into your greatest strength. But see, until then, stay sharp, stay savage, stay true. The power isn't out there, it's within you. I just made that up on the spot. That rhymes quite right. But I appreciate you guys. I respect you. I love you. I'll catch you on the next one. And I'll have another video for you here. And you can subscribe here. Take care. Bye.